Hi, this is Logan Garibay, and today we're going to talk about the Dungeons & Dragons Young Reader's Guide, the Young Reader's Guide, the Young Adventurer's Guide to Dungeons & Dragons, and whether it's a version of Dungeons & Dragons. I thought this was a simple answer. It wasn't. It was more complicated than I thought. Let's talk it through. So the reason why we're talking about this today is the OG GM. He calls himself like the old grumpy GM. He's got a tiny channel. He's got like 200 subscribers. I can't sign off on his method. He swears a lot, which I wish he didn't do that. His content would be a lot more accessible to me without a lot of curse words. I'm not sure why anybody needs to curse in order to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, but this guy apparently does. And actually, it's not just him. There's a lot of people who feel like curse words are necessary to commentate on Dungeons and Dragons. I don't agree with that, but the guy's very interesting, and he's got a lot of good content mixed in with some stuff I wouldn't sign off on. But he's interesting, and I absolutely do listen to him. And he brought up, he was talking about how many versions of Dungeons and Dragons are there, and what constitutes a version. That's a fantastic question, right? So Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is unarguably an edition, right? Is the Essentials kit an edition of Dungeons and Dragons? You can buy the Essentials kit and play, right? There's no two ways about that, and frankly, it's even arguable that you might be able to get a better game out of the Essentials kit than you could with DMG, PHP, and Monster Manual. So, is the Essentials kit an edition? Yeah, I definitely think it is, right? That then begs the question, is the Rick and Morty Dungeons & Dragons starter set an edition? Yeah, I think so, right? So here's the question. So Dungeons & Dragons, they brought out this Young Adventurer's Guide to D&D, and it is multiple books. I think they're all written by a gentleman by the name of Jim Zub. I'm a huge fan of Jim Zub. He is an amazing writer. He writes comic books. He wrote a really, really good comic book called Skull Splitters, and he's written Wayward and quite a few others. He's a brilliant, brilliant writer. And so WotC brought him on to do this Young Adventurer's Guide to Dungeons & Dragons, right? And what it is it takes the content that's in the Monster Manual, the DMG, and the PHP, and it splits it up, and it has currently split it up into Dungeons and Tombs, Warriors and Weapons, Wizards and I think it's Wizards and Magic, and then also Behemoths and Leviathans, and then last is Monsters and Mazes. Okay, so it's like 5 separate books, and they take up everything that's in the DMG, everything that's in PHP, everything that's in the Monster Manual, boil it down, right? It's a redux. It's looked at everything that's in those books and said, this is in, this is out, this is in, this is out, right? But all of it was reviewed and decided on whether to exclude it or include it, right? And so at first I thought, I was actually, my fingers got hot when OGGM said, I think this is a version of Dungeons & Dragons. I'm like, no, dude, I own it. So first of all, I had been getting these from my library, and then I ordered them, right? I actually ordered them because they're absolutely fantastic. They're the best distillation of Dungeons & Dragons official content that I've ever seen in any form, right? One of the things is like the Monster Manual pages, right? The monster pages. You present a monster on 2 pages. It gives everything that the monster does, but there's no numbers, right? It just explains what the monster does, and then it tells you, if you're going to fight this monster, do this and don't do this. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. What a way to make monsters accessible to players, right? And I really think the Monster Manual should be totally accessible to all players, right? It's ridiculous that is considered a Dungeon Master book. It's crazy. It's just ridiculous. So I love that this made monsters very accessible and gave players advice on how to fight a monster, how to not fight a monster, and really looked at monsters in a very unique way. And also, the fact that this is a boiled down redux of Dungeons & Dragons, honestly, I'm all for it. Because the reality, because each one of these books is like 100 pages, but it's literally a third the size of the regular Dungeons and Dragons book, maybe half the size, and there's lots of art. This is easily, cutting half to 2/3 out of the content that you would need to read Dungeons and Dragons. And frankly, I will tell you, I love Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. I love every edition of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's too long. It is horribly too long. Why on earth should anybody, people say, oh, being a dungeon master is easy. Lie. Being a dungeon master is outrageously hard. You should not touch being a dungeon master if you haven't read the MMG, the DMG, and the PHP, right? And if you're bringing somebody to a 750-page read, that is a lie that it's easy. Nothing that's easy takes 750 pages to explain, right? So that's the issue. Now, I don't have too much of a beef with WotC or with 5th edition, because they do have the Essentials kit, and you can run with the Essentials kit and read less than 100 pages. So that's cool. That's very cool that that's accessible, right? But so I was about to correct OGGM and say this is clearly not a version because it doesn't have any rules, but that is wrong. All right, the Young Adventurer's Guide does have rules. They are the most open, completely pliable, inviting rules version that Dungeons and Dragons has ever undergone. But every single one of these books at the end has 3 to 4 pages that say, here's how you take the material in this book and make stories with you by yourself or with your friends, right? And the moment it says with your friends, it says, here's how you make a story. And here's how a story progresses using the material in this book. So it literally invites the players to make their own stories with the D&D elements that are there, okay? And it does not say this is how you do a difficulty check, right? What it says is when you need to determine what happens next in the story, it should be, the method to use should be unpredictable and variable, all right? And then it shows a picture of the dice, right? So what is the rule set here? Well, this is truly Ouroboros. This is truly the snake eating its tail. So what happens with many, many, many young people, and this happened with me, right? And I've heard many designers say this, is they get the Dungeons & Dragons book, or even they get a fraction of the Dungeons & Dragons books, or they saw the cover of the Dungeons & Dragons books, and they immediately go home, they grab some D6s out of their Monopoly game, and they start making the story, and they say, you attack the monster, roll your dice. If you get over a 3, you hit the monster, right? They don't even know how to do it, right? But their desire to play the game is so strong that they eschew the rules, right? This is a version of Dungeons and Dragons that literally invites them and says, make your own story with your friends, and gives a picture of the dice, saying that's how you do it. Visually saying that's how you do it. It is the most open-ended and freestyle version of the rules that has ever been produced. And frankly, I'll tell you right now, it is a version. These books constitute a version. If you have the Warriors and Weapons book, it's an entire edition into itself, okay? Any one of the books can be used to tell Dungeons & Dragons story. Any one of the books, right? Because the rules are so open-ended, right? And I think a lot of players would like to deny it as an edition, but it is absolutely an edition because it does contain rules. Those rules are more open than any other edition and far more freestyle than any other edition, but it is clearly an edition of Dungeons & Dragons. To anybody who wants to deny it being an edition, the one piece of evidence that they would have is Dungeons & Dragons is not admitting it's an edition, right? And that's interesting. That is very, very interesting, right? And I think this is Dungeons & Dragons just understanding their product, understanding that their product is so desirable to some people, that they will play the game even if they don't have the game. So this is where, where the cool uncle, this is a product where the cool uncle can give this to their niece who's going to be a valedictorian, and pretend that they gave them a pile of books and not Dungeons and Dragons as a playable game. But it is absolutely a playable game. The Young Edition, any one of the books, and particularly Warriors and Weapons, is absolutely a full-on 100% edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And frankly, I would call it Dungeons and Dragons 5.2, okay? Or 5. You know what? Here's a good one. Everybody says 5e. This is 5b, all right, for beginners and for book lovers. The Young Edition, the Young Adventurer's Guide to Dungeons and Dragons is full 100% a version of Dungeons and Dragons, and I love it. And I cannot recommend enough to you to buy it. It is fantastic. Get this edition of Dungeons & Dragons. It's my opinion that it truly is an official edition. What's your opinion? What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.